Final Fantasy VIII. Long ago, the creator Hein populated Centra with humans, and later turned against them. Near death, she passed her magic to a human woman who became the first sorceress. As humans spread from the Centra civilization across the planet, a succession of witches inherited Hein's power throughout history, often in secret. In the distant future, this power will eventually belong to a cruel sorceress named Ultimecia. That's thread number 1. Thread number 2. The moon is full of monsters. Sometimes there are many monsters, and they pile up and they create this magic monster mountain that dumps them down onto the planet. This periodic event is called the Lunar Cry. About 80 years before the game, one of these destroys the Centra civilization. The Crystal Pillar, a sinister artifact that seems to agitate the moon monsters, also falls to Earth and is buried underground. Centra survivors resettle in mobile shelters around the world. Eventually, the Dalit Empire dissolves into the western regions we recognize today, and Esthar rises in the east. 20 years ago, sorceress Adele assumes power in Esthar. We now know that this is the first stage of Ultimecia's temporal pincer maneuver, and she is puppeting Adele from the future via mental junctioning, but we'll get to it. Galbadia is seeking supremacy in the west under President Delling and occupies Timber, setting off a long rebellion there, while a young Galbadian soldier named Laguna yearns to see the world. Adele begins a campaign of global warfare specifically targeting Galbadia, who in response accelerates their own militarization. During the war, Esthar locates the Crystal Pillar buried in Centra and begins to excavate. Laguna's Galbadian scout team finds the dig site and he's seriously wounded by Esthar security. They build a massive housing called the lunatic Pandora to fly the Crystal Pillar back to Esthar for study. Laguna recuperates in Windhill, where a woman named Rain and her adopted daughter Elone take him in, and they fall in love. Elone is a particularly gifted child. Adele is looking for an heir to inherit her own powers, and abducts Elone as part of a sweeping kidnapping campaign. Laguna leaves Windhill to search for a way into Esthar to rescue her. The lunatic Pandora is successfully used to provoke a lunar cry over the Trabia Mountains. Laguna is on a nearby film set and sees the monsters it unleashes. He's eventually captured and imprisoned, gets caught up with the Esthar anti-sorceress movement, and leads rebel forces to lay a trap for Adele using Elone as bait. Adele is frozen in stasis, and her tomb is launched into orbit to prevent her from passing her powers to anyone else. The lunatic Pandora is sunk into the ocean, and Laguna is hailed as a hero in Esthar. He sends Elone home while he agrees to help Esthar recover, he's elected president, and Esthar goes into a long period of isolation. Tragically, Laguna's wife Rain passes away in Windhill after giving birth to their son Squall before she can even tell Laguna she was pregnant. Squall and Elone are sent to an orphanage run by a woman named Edea, who raises them with several other children. Edea was born with natural sorceress powers, and one day at the orphanage, she encounters a dying sorceress on the beach and inherits her powers as well. Soon after, Edea encounters an adult version of Squall who warns her that Edea must create the fighting force to eventually kill the sorceress she just encountered. As we'll see at the end of the story, this is Squall's own temporal pincer maneuver planting the seed for Seed. So, Edea and her husband Sid decide to abandon the orphanage. The old Centra shelters are converted into training centers, and children from the orphanage end up at different gardens around the world, unknowingly preparing to become an elite anti-sorceress fighting force. Sid and Edea, of course, know that Squall must necessarily be among the seeds that are trained, and thus have a rough idea when this battle will occur. Elone is hidden with Edea on the so-called White Seed ship, while Sid becomes Balamb Garden's headmaster with Squall under his wing. The game begins on the eve of Squall's graduation from the academy, when Elone arrives at Balamb Garden to tell Sid that Edea has suddenly changed, as if possessed. Edea traveled to Galbadia to ingratiate herself with the leadership there and is on the cusp of ascending to power, following a path similar to Adele 20 years before. Galbadia's first aggression is the Siege of Dalit, which doubles as Squall's graduation exam. The G Army successfully repairs the radio tower to transmit a global message or warning about the sorceress. Squall's team is then called to Timber to help Renoa and the resistance there try to capture the Galbadian president before this message can go out. But Seed candidate and rival Cypher interferes and is kidnapped by Edea. Sid, in cooperation with G Garden headmaster Martine and G Army General Caraway, engineer a plan to assassinate Edea during her inauguration parade before she can send the G Army abroad. The Seeds go through G Garden to pick up the sniper Irvine and onto Galbadian capital Delling City. Cypher is seen there, now in thrall to the sorceress. Unfortunately, the attempt is easily thwarted, and Squall is seriously wounded, some say fatally. The seeds are sent to a prison in the Dingo Desert, and Edea prepares a retaliatory strike against Balamb and Trebia Gardens for the scheme. They manage to escape the prison and split into two teams, with Selphie's team going to the nearby missile base in Galbadia to interfere with the launch, and Squall's team rushing back to Balamb to sound the alarm. At Balamb, a revolt is underway because the garden financier Norg wants to surrender the seeds to appease Edea, while Sid knows Seed's true purpose is to kill her. The team fights their way through Norg loyalists to the original Centra underground control mechanism for the mobile shelters and initiates a takeoff. The missile-based team is unable to save Trebia Garden, but they modify the coordinates to Balamb Garden enough that Squall is able to maneuver it out of the way just in time. Balamb Garden crashes into an ocean outpost called Fisherman's Horizon, where they reunite with Selphie's team and Alone returns to the seed ship. Selphie requests that they check on her home garden of Trebia, and they find it devastated. The seeds regroup here, and they talk about memories. So let's talk about memory. When Adele was in charge, her chief scientist Dr. Odin developed paramagic that allowed normal humans to use magic in finite amounts through junctioning. Humans could also create a mental junction with magical beings called guardian forces to enhance their paramagic, and this was standard practice for the seeds. However, the mental junction with GFs was known to cause memory loss over time. In Trebia, Irvine suddenly says, "Hey, don't you all remember how we grew up in that orphanage together with Edea?" And none of the other kids do, because they're child soldiers who have incurred memory loss via junctioning. Only Irvine remembers because he didn't use GFs at G Garden. Together they begin to remember the orphanage and their childhood together before they were splintered around age 5, as Squall estimates, and they remember Edea before she was possessed. So they decide to visit their childhood home once more, but not before Squall dramatically reassures everyone that they're not going to stop using their memory-destroying weapons. While all of this recollection is going on, Edea and Cypher reactivate G Garden's flight deck and go south as well, searching for Alone. The stage is now set for the Battle of the Gardens. Balamb and Galbadia clash over the forests of the Centra Peninsula. Squall takes the tactical lead on the way into G Garden's auditorium, where Edea awaits. This time, the seeds are victorious against Edea and Cypher. After the battle, the dark cloud over Edea dissipates, and Renoa suddenly falls into a coma after whispering an order to Cypher, who flees to recover the lunatic Pandora from the ocean. Edea returns to the orphanage to convalesce and reveals that she too was under the control of the future sorceress Ultimecia. Remember, Alone was a gifted child. She can create mental junctions between the past and present. Dr. Odin studied this power during her capture under Adele. During the first part of Squall's story, Alone used her gift to show him dreams of key moments from his father's life throughout his journey. That's how we get Laguna's backstory, but diegetically, Alone was trying to prevent her own kidnapping and subsequent abandonment. It didn't work. But eventually, Dr. Odin will use his research to create a junction machine that imperfectly emulates her powers. And later still, Ultimecia will discover this machine and use it to possess Adele and Edea in their time. Ultimecia believes Alone's natural powers will allow her to achieve godlike status through something called time compression. Edea now believes Renoa has absorbed Ultimecia's powers and is in great danger, and that Alone is the key to stopping Ultimecia for good. However, the White Seeds tell them Alone has fled to Esthar after the Galbadia Garden appeared. Squall carries a comatose Renoa from FH to the Great Salt Lake, and from there Edea and the others join them in visiting Esthar. Odin receives them and tells them Alone followed Laguna up to the lunar base. So Odin sends a small group up to join her, but the moment Squall leaves the surface, the lunatic Pandora reappears. Odin determines that Cypher plans to trigger another lunar cry over Tyr's Point in Esthar, and the terrestrial team unsuccessfully tries to intercept the lunatic Pandora as it moves across the city. Renoa suddenly reawakens on the lunar base in orbit and frees Adele from her tomb by force. The lunar cry begins, Ultimecia abandons Renoa's body for Adele once more, and the tomb falls back to Earth. With Alone's help, Squall is able to rescue Renoa before she dies in space. Esthar attempts to put Renoa into stasis upon landing, as she's now considered a dangerous, powerful sorceress, but Squall breaks her free and finally meets his father Laguna. Their conversation is brief. Alone was taken from her escape pod by Galbadia and is now held in the Pandora with Adele, and things are coming to a head. Odin comes up with a plan to kill Adele and essentially bait Ultimecia's time compression magic with Renoa, allowing Alone to create a bridge to Ultimecia's own time so the seeds can kill her directly. The spaceship Ragnarok pierces the fortress and the team carries out the plan. After Adele is killed, time compression begins. At this point, Squall and the seeds can attack and kill Ultimecia in her castle. some have speculated the form of the creator Hein appears above Ultimecia's suspended body. As the time compression collapses after the battle, Squall is sent to the fateful beach where he delivers his warning to Edea about creating the legendary seeds. Happy endings for everyone. Taking candid pictures, choking on hot dogs, even the Kramers are here. And oh yeah, the game has a romantic subplot with Squall and Rinoa, this is the end of it. Laguna's still kinda flaky, but he gets a poignant ending. It does look here like the garden hovers a little bit higher than it can in the game, implying Squalls continue to upgrade it even in peacetime, implying that there's still something out there that's making him mad. And that's Final Fantasy VIII. Thanks for watching.